Ready or not, the Jaxson Dart era of New York Giants football is about to begin. Can he inject a spark into the offense and help the Giants turn this season around against the Los Angeles Chargers on Sunday? Let's talk about it next on the Big Blue Breakdown live. Hello again, everybody. I'm Paul Dottino. So glad you could join us for the Big Blue Breakdown Live. We are in our regular time slot every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time to take your phone calls, your chats, your audio calls, and of course, your video calls here on the program. Now, before we go anywhere else, I want to make sure that everybody knows we've got a very, very special guest coming in tonight. And this is going to be David Kellum, who is the radio voice for Ole Miss football. He's going to be coming up in about a half hour. Now, Kellum has been doing Ole Miss athletic sporting events, whether it was football, baseball, basketball, for well over 40 years. He was the play-by-play voice for the Rebels when Eli Manning was there. So he goes back a long way, and he has seen a whole ton of action in the SEC. He also was very closely involved with the career of one Jaxson Dart at the University of Mississippi, the Ole Miss Rebels. He's coming up on the program tonight at 8:30, and I can already promise you, because I talked to him just a short time ago, I can promise you there is a host of stuff in this interview where he's going to tell us some really great insight about Jaxson Dart, what his positives and negatives are, what his future probably could be for the Giants based on his attributes. It's really good stuff. That comes up at 8:30. I strongly suggest, if nothing else, you listen to the interview with David Kellum, the voice of Ole Miss football, because after all, Jaxson Dart is the headline of the day. In fact, he's the headline of the week. All right, let's get right to it. We did hear today from head coach Brian Daboll, who confirmed, of course, the reports that came out all over the national media yesterday, that it would be Jaxson Dart. He is the new Giants starting quarterback. And today, Brian Daboll told everybody it's not just for Sunday. The plan is to start Dart for the rest of the season and make veteran Russell Wilson the backup. Now, Daboll himself said that's the way he expects it to go. And he has no reason or desire to get rid of Wilson, nor did Wilson express to him a desire to get out. When Russell Wilson talked to the media earlier today, he said he loves this team, is very happy to be here, disappointed that he won't be playing, but also understands that the key in life is how you react to a situation. And so he's going to continue to give his best. He is going to continue to try to mentor Jaxson Dart, and says he's all in after an 0-3 start, trying to see if there's anything the Giants can do to turn this thing around. That's a very mature, leadership type of way to address the situation. Now, I will say this to you. Russell Wilson hasn't asked to leave the Giants, and the Giants haven't asked him to leave. That does not mean that another NFL team in desperate need of a veteran quarterback won't pick up the phone and try to pry him away. That is certainly a possibility. We all know what's going on in the NFL. There's a bunch of quarterbacks already hurt. Some of them on good teams. Would they be so inclined to ring the phone down in East Rutherford and see what they could do about making a deal? Maybe they will. Maybe there'll be a deal that's worth it for the Giants to take. Then again, maybe there won't be. But as it stands now, they're not shopping Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson is not eager to go anywhere. Now, quite frankly, and this is no knock or no black cat bad luck to be placed on Jaxson Dart, but with the way quarterbacks do go down in this league, I mean, we've seen over the last 2 years how many backups and third stringers have had to play. Heck, we've even seen the Giants themselves have to go through a litany of quarterbacks over the last few years. Just because you're number 2 today doesn't mean you stay that way. And again, it's through no fault of anybody. It's just that quarterbacks naturally have a tendency to get banged up in this league. It's a very, very difficult game to play and try to stay healthy at the same time. So, be that as it may, that's where it stands right now. Coach Dable met with both QBs yesterday, talked to them, told them what he was going to do, and that's the way it is. Dart seems like he's very confident, very assertive. As always, a competitor. He wants to play. He says he's ready for it, understands it's not going to be easy, but he's going to continue to try to check all the boxes as he has since the day he was drafted by the Giants. And indeed, he's done that. Now, you folks know, we've talked about this since he got to the Giants campus for rookie minicamp. He has checked all of the boxes. He had a few tough practices that were kind of mediocre, right, at the end of training camp. But for the most part, his arrow has gone up every day. He had 3 terrific preseason appearances. And so I do understand the optimism and the hope. After all, he was a number 1 draft pick. I thought, outside of Cam Ward potentially, Dart was the best fit for all the quarterbacks in the draft for the New York Giants. So I thought he'd be a second rounder for them. I didn't necessarily think they'd go up in the first round to get him, but they did. So, be that as it may, what Brian Dable said is that over the last few weeks, Dart has taken 1 or 2 reps with the starting unit during practice. He runs the scout team. And then today, Dable further explained that Dart gets the full practice snap report. And after practice, he stays out on the field with a couple of receivers, and they run all of the plays that the Giants ran during that day's practice. They do it by themselves. They can't be with the coaches because the NFLPA rules will not allow that. There's a CBA in place, and there's only a certain amount of practice time that you can do each and every day. Plus, you have to have certain days off. So, according to Coach Dable, on his own, Dart has a couple of receivers out there, and long after practice is over, they run through the actual plays on a limited basis, of course, because they don't have the whole team out there. But the quarterback and the receivers run through the plays that Russell Wilson ran through during that morning's practice session. So that's how they have been preparing Dart to get ready for this opportunity. Okay? This is a kid who has gone above and beyond whatever the prescription was for hours that are needed to be put in to prepare. He has gone many times over that limit because he has that much dedication to his craft. So that's where it stands. The locker room had an opportunity to talk to Darius Slayton today, Dexter Lawrence, a number of other players as well, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jermaine Illuminor. Basically, the feeling in the locker room is they have great respect for Russell Wilson. I know after the game the other night, they absolutely indicated they had confidence in him, and they were all aboard with him, his professionalism, his attitude. They respect him to the heavens. And the Giants were fully buying in. The players were fully buying in to stick with Wilson. Now that the move has been made, What they described was a continuing respect for Wilson, okay? But also, now they've got to be asked about Dart. It's like, all right, well, what do you think about Jaxson? And again, universally, the answer is they love his energy, they love his personality, they love his work habits. They all believe he's got an awful lot of talent, and they all said they would do everything collectively to support him as much as they possibly could because they believe he's got enough of talent in his body to have a terrific future in this league. Now, does that mean they're going to get instantaneous wins during the 2025 season? Look, nobody knows that for sure, not even his teammates in the locker room. But they're going to do everything they can to make that possible. And that's where it stands as far as the Giants quarterback situation. So that's the headline of the day, the headline of the week. They will take on a 3-0 not San Diego, but Los Angeles Chargers team on Sunday. By the way, the Chargers are really banged up. We will talk about that as we go through the course of the program. Giants injuries. Guys who did not practice today, obviously Tyrone Tracy, coming off of the shoulder injury the other night against Kansas City. I would say he's not going to be out very long. I don't expect it to be a lengthy injury, but he is certainly going to be out this week. I think that's a very logical thing to say based on the way he got banged up against Kansas City. Nacho has himself a foot, Nunez Roches, so it remains to be seen what he's going to do this weekend, but he did not practice today. Malik Neighbors injured his shoulder in the game the other day. Did not seem overly concerned about it. I've been telling people now for weeks, even for a couple of months, they give him load management days off during the week, usually because of his sore back. This time they're listing him with a shoulder. When he was pressed about it, he seemed to be fine walking around, but he said, look, I didn't practice today. You'll read the injury report. In terms of my availability on Sunday, you guys will get that status report from the coaches. So I understand. It's not his place to say. And I would only say this. Yes, of course, anytime a player's on the injury report and does not practice, it raises a yellow flag as to his availability. I don't think there's any question about that. But here's what I will say, okay? Here's what I will say, and this is very, very important. The Giants are going to be very lenient with Malik Neighbors. He is their marquee player, their most explosive player, okay? So he's going to get load management days off, I would say, on a regular basis. So when I see him on the injury report and he doesn't practice or he practices limited, to me, I am not going to raise a red flag on that. I'll raise a yellow flag on that to say, okay, just keep an eye on it. But until he actually starts to miss games, I won't raise a red flag on it. Okay, limited guys at practice today. Flanagan fouls with a calf. Chauncey Golston with an ankle. Muasau is moving up in the concussion protocol, but still a ways away. John Michael Schmidt's a sore neck. Darius Slayton had a sore calf. And Andrew Thomas still listed as limited with the sore foot. Brian Dable did tell the media today as he was walking away from his presser that Thomas felt good and he came out of the game well. Now, he played 28 snaps against Kansas City. They were looking for a limit of 25. I guess they finished off a drive and it came out to 28. I don't think it's out of the question that they'll limit his snaps again against the Chargers. I don't think that's out of the question at all. In fact, I think it's probably likely. Would they give him as many as 40 or 50? I would think they'll give him more, but I don't know if he's going to play the full game. So that's where it starts right there. The injury report for The Los Angeles Chargers, well, this isn't very good for them. It features two guys, actually three guys on the offensive line. Center Bradley Bozeman has himself a back injury, didn't work today. Mekhi Becton, the former Jet and Eagle, is their starting right guard. Bozeman, of course, is the starting center. Becton has himself a sore knee, did not practice today. And Trey Pipkins, their starting right tackle, also has an injured knee. He did not practice today either. Nor did tight end Will Dissly, their starting tight end. He has a sore knee and did not practice. So 3 offensive linemen, the center and the 2 linemen on the right side of the line, plus their starting tight end. That's probably not going to make head coach Jim Harbaugh very happy. The question remains, how bad are those injuries? As the week progresses, we will find out if those guys get upgraded to limited or if they're out, or, again, maybe they could be load management pieces as well. It does not appear, based on media reports out of Los Angeles, that they are load management. It does appear like those are legitimate injuries. Okay, let's see what we got here. Isaac Moore joins the program today and says it's going to be a good one. I do think it will too. Again, Ole Miss's football play-by-play guy coming up at the bottom of the hour at 8:30, and I do think you guys are going to love it. Big Blue chimes in and says, good evening. Mark B. also wishing a nice evening to everybody. He says, I heard we got a new quarterback one. Yeah, that is true. Matt Seepersad is in. So is Armand Duda. A bunch of our regulars are coming in. Another day, another quarterback starting. Armand says he is excited. Armand says, glad to hear they put the work in on their own time. And that is the key. Now, putting in work on your own time is not the same as getting practice reps. Huge difference. Okay? That's the key here. I appreciate what Dart has done on his own time, and Dable said he was fine with that. That was part of the program that Dart had decided he was going to do. But he hasn't gotten hardly any practice reps with the starters. We told you that on the show last week, and that remains true. Brian Dable even confirmed that earlier today. Dart has been going through his own set of practice reps with receivers after practice. That's legal, okay? It's legal because he's doing it on his own, but it's not the same as participating in a full practice with the starters. So we will see how valuable that turns out to be. Mark B says, Dable let everyone know starting Dart is his choice, said it several times. That is correct. That is correct. He was even asked about the front office and said if they had said otherwise, I'm sure they would have told you, and would that have impacted your decision? He said, I've decided that this is the way I'm going. They've given him, the head coach, the right to make the player deployment decisions, which has always been the case with the New York Giants. The owner does not say who starts. The owner does not say who gets into the game as a reserve. And although the general manager and head coach do talk all the time, my understanding is that it doesn't happen from the GM's point of view either. The head coach gets to make the player deployment decisions. And so Brian Dable is taking this entire decision on his own shoulders because that's the way the Giants do it, and Dable's not running from that. Matt Seepersad says, good way to support Paulie here is to share the stream link to your social media pages. I just shared to a big Giants group. Well, Matt, that's awfully kind of you, and we thank you. Because, the more people that join the program, we can get more chats. We can get a more variety of comments and questions. Maybe we can even get a phone call or a video call. And we always love those as well. Hometown Texas. Last week's show, I said Dart getting reps with the ones as Paul questioned me saying the practice was inside. And how would I know, like I said last week, they were getting ready for Dart inside sources? Well, Hometown Tex, I'm sorry, but indeed you were inaccurate. As Dable himself confirmed today, he was not getting first-team reps with practice. he was getting them on his own with some of the receivers after practice. It is not the same as getting first team reps or full practice reps. It is not the same. If you don't know the difference, well, I'm sorry, but I can't get you into practice, but I would love to get you down there so you could actually learn the difference. Armand Duda says Eli had only 2 wins his first season. Shouldn't write off Dart if he has a similar record. Well, of course, remember something about Eli, Armand. The Giants were 5-4 at the time when they sent Kurt Warner to the sidelines and put Eli in. He had quite a bit more time to prepare and to learn and to watch. That's not the case right now with Jaxson Dart. His situation is actually much more like Daniel Jones. And you're saying to me, well, why? Well, Daniel Jones started in week 3 of the 2019 season when he was a rookie. Jones went on to finish with a 3-9 record as a starter. And again, let me put an asterisk on this because you guys know I do not value starting quarterback wide receiver records. Okay? I don't. There are too many other things that come into play. But for the purposes of this item, I will tell you, Daniel Jones was 3-9 during his 12 starts once he got inserted into week 3 of the 2019 season as a rookie. He threw for just over 3,000 yards and had 24 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. It was probably the second best season of his Giants career because I still believe that the 2022 season when he led the Giants to 9 wins in a playoff appearance and postseason victory on the road in Minnesota was his best season. I still believe that. He was very effective, very, very efficient, okay, which is the key word, efficient. He was not spectacular. There were so many people out there who still cry over the fact that, well, why wasn't he giving the Giants huge highlight plays that were on SportsCenter every night? Well, that's not what Daniel Jones did that season. He was incredibly efficient, like a crafty left-hander, if you will, in baseball. If I can just cross over for a second, because the New York Yankees did clinch a postseason bid yesterday, and they still have a chance to overtake Toronto in the American League East. At least something is going right for professional sports teams in New York. But anyway, I digress. So Armand, I just gave you a stat line for comparison. If you want to, for whatever reason, keep track of how Dart could do as a rookie being inserted early into the season. It would really be more along the lines of Daniel Jones's deal than Eli's. Jay Fed. Hey, Paul, after Sunday in that embarrassment of a game, I've lost all confidence in this coaching staff. The players don't execute and aren't prepared. Jay Fed, I can only say this. It is incredibly difficult to watch a team underachieve. I believe that I know the talent that's on this roster, and it's better than what they have displayed and put on tape. I do believe that. But here's the bottom line. What you put on tape is what brings your record to the NFL offices when they decide how to place you in the standings and if they're going to give you a ticket to the postseason. So, we see this very often in baseball, not so much in football because obviously there's a salary cap. But in baseball, they always talk about the best team that money could buy. And we've seen the Mets, we've seen the Baltimore Orioles, we've seen the Los Angeles Angels. We've seen a number of teams and franchises over the years, even the Texas Rangers, I suppose, for a short time, who spent gobs and gobs of money and became the worst team that money could buy for that particular season. Because it doesn't necessarily matter if you accumulate a tremendous amount of talent on the roster. It's how do they perform? Yes, it's also how are they coached? How is the strategy employed? In part, how much of a factor are injuries? There's game flow. There are lucky breaks and there are bad breaks. And then, quite honestly, also sometimes there's just the fact that the other team had guys who made plays. Like, for example, I mean, how many of you were shaking your head at the 33-yard catch that Thornton made down to the Giants' 1-yard line the other day? Patrick Mahomes was getting pressured. He rolled out to the right. He did not plant his feet. He did not follow through. He just lofted a rainbow deep down the left side of the field, throwing across his body. Drew Phillips is right there to make the play. He could not be any more on the receiver. It was almost like mustard on a hot dog. That's how well he was covered. And somehow, that 50-50 ball wound up into the hands of Thornton. First and goal, Kansas City at the Giants 1. That's when coaches say the other team gets paid too. But ultimately, a big problem for the Giants for a lot of these difficult seasons over the past decade is that they haven't made enough of those plays. You have to be able to make plays above the X's and the O's. And a 50-50 ball, when you complete a 50-50 ball, that is a play above the X's and the O's. And I've been saying for a long time, that's the one element that really, really has killed this Giants team. Because as much talent as they have accumulated, and it's a solid amount, the guys are not making plays above expectations. And it's very hard in this league to put together wins if you don't make any plays above the X's and the O's and the other team makes 3 or 4 during the course of the game. In fact, maybe I'm going to start keeping that statistic. I never have before. Tom Coughlin always talked about turnovers, right? And if you're -2 in turnovers, you're going to lose 80% of the games. Coach Coughlin always used to talk about that. Well, you know what? Maybe it's time, because I've noticed this with the Giants for far too long. Maybe I should keep a separate category. Plays above the X's and the O's. Think about this when you're watching a Giants game, folks, right? Think about it. You're watching the game and you see a play that's made and you know it wasn't designed to go that way. It was just because somebody on the team wound up making a super play. How many times can you say that about the Giants? Week in and week out. You got to make probably 3 of those a game, in all honesty. You probably have to make 3 of those a game, eye-openers, if you will. That's when I used to write some years ago. I used to work at the Bergen Record, obviously, in New Jersey, and for a long time I partnered with Vinny DiTrani, who's a Hall of Fame finalist newspaper writer and covered the Giants for 34 years. When I partnered with Vinny for several years to write about Giants football, we used to have a category that we would call amongst ourselves eye-openers. And really, those were the plays above the X's and the O's. So I'm very sensitive to that, and I'm very much aware of that, but I haven't been keeping an actual chart of it on a game-by-game basis. I think I need to do that this year. Okay. Let's see what we have. Matt Sieper said, and we're going to get to our guest in just a moment. Let me just get to this particular comment. My fear with Dart is the Daniel Jones scenario. Multiple O-season head coaches over his first few seasons. Ideally, he plays really well. We roll off a couple unlikely wins, and Dable keeps his job. Fine. And Armand Duda says, Jones definitely had his best season with the Giants in 2022. We'll always be thankful for him for that playoff performance in Minnesota. Absolutely. I say the same thing all the time about Scott Brunner. When the Giants made the playoffs in 1981 and went down to the vet in Philadelphia, and outstanding day for the Giants special teams. And of course, Rob Carpenter, who finally grinded out the yardage at the end of the game to milk the clock. But Scott Brunner was the quarterback for that road playoff victory in Philadelphia. And as you folks know, that postseason appearance was the first one for the Giants since 1963. So it was an incredibly monumental season-end victory. And Scott Brunner, for whatever you want to say about him, and by the way, he's a hell of a nice guy and a very smart individual. For whatever else you want to say or think about him, he was the guy at the end of that 81 season who got the Giants into the playoffs and was the quarterback for the winning team that beat the dreaded Philadelphia Eagles. Also want to mention, Matt Sieper says, side note, Will Hernandez is still playing guard for Arizona at a decent level. I haven't watched Cardinals tape to know if that's true or not. I know he's still there. I know his contract had run out, and they did wind up bringing him back. But I don't know how well he has played, Matt. And Armand Duda says, Yankees still have a chance to pass Toronto for the division. Yes, they do. I thought I mentioned that earlier. All right, now it's time to bring in our special guest. And I know you folks are going to enjoy this one. David Kellum has been the radio voice for Ole Miss football since 1989 specifically. He started calling Ole Miss athletics other sports even another 15 or 20 years before that. Now, he not only knows everything there is to know about Jaxson Dart, but he can also put the rookie's talents into perspective because he has seen a slew of quarterbacks in the very highly thought of SEC of college football. So earlier today, I asked him how Rebels Nation reacted to the news of Jaxson Dart, their star alum, being named the starting quarterback of the New York Football Giants.
Oh, it's fantastic. Another Ole Miss Giant quarterback. That's pretty cool for Rebel Land, Rebel Nation for sure. Yeah, I was really excited when he, got drafted by the Giants, and he's just a great kid. But there's a lot of folks talking about, hey, did you see Jaxson starting this week? So, and there's been a lot in our part of the world of, it's about time.
All right, well, let's get to it because a lot of people thought, well, it could be sooner. Some people thought it could be later. Like myself, I've always felt that rookies in the NFL, especially quarterbacks, it may not be a bad idea to sit for a season. But here we are, the Giants have made the decision. In your opinion, what is it about Jaxson Dart, not only as a player, but about his maturity as a person and his attitude and mentality that will allow him to have a good chance to succeed, even though he's stepping in so early into the season?
Well, Paul, I think you make a great point because we've seen through the years, in the NFL, rookie quarterback, things aren't going well, throw them to the wolves and get gobbled up. And so it is kind of a scary thought from that standpoint. But, Jackson's extremely mature. I think that, and I'm not in the NFL on a daily basis. I'm in the college world, but I do believe that he's one of those kids that's very gifted. He's very mature. I think he can handle adversity, if it comes his way. So I think those aspects of him are really impressive. And he's a tremendous leader. And that's hard to a rookie quarterback to kind of step in that locker room and be a leader. But I think he's got a chance to do that as well. He was fantastic at that at Ole Miss. In fact, a lot of kids would not have played in the bowl game that we played at the end of the season. We missed the playoffs by just a hair. And so there was a lot of disappointment in the program, but we go play in the Gator Bowl, and Jaxson announces that he's going to play in the game. He not only played in, he played the entire game, and he convinced everybody else on the team to play. And so we beat Duke pretty handedly in that game. But I mean, they just followed him in a special way, and so everybody opted to play in the game and pretty much played the entire game. You haven't seen that a lot in college football, so I do think that there are some elements of him that will help him kind of get through trying to be a rookie starting quarterback.
How much, if at all, did you get a chance to watch some of his preseason games with the Giants back in August? Because quite frankly, he was very impressive, and all the Giants people have said he checked all the boxes to that point. Of course, this is another step trying to play a regular season game.
Yeah, no doubt. And I saw some highlights. I was, of course, getting ready for our season too, but we would, see him and go, well, there's Jaxson. That's exactly what he did at Ole Miss, pretty much. And of course, it's a totally different level. The speed of the game is a whole lot more, and there'll be things that he's going to have to deal with. But he's very confident. He's a confident quarterback, not necessarily a cocky quarterback, but a confident quarterback. He believes in his abilities. And so, and he's willing to make, a throw sometimes that other quarterbacks might shy from. We'll see if that leads to some issues with him, but I don't think it will. I think he's incredible. And, he wasn't really labeled a dual threat quarterback in college, but he can run. How much the Giants will have him run, who knows? But we were kind of slim in the running back room last year. And so Jaxson had to run a good bit. And he's not one of those sliding guys. He wants to go head first. So the coaches will have to keep a grip on him so he doesn't.
We've seen it, David. We've seen it.
Doesn't put himself in danger. He really thinks he's a fullback, I think, but he's probably going to want to run when he sees opportunities to run too.
In some ways, I've told people, I covered Phil Simms when he was the Giants starting quarterback, and he reminds me of Phil in that Bill Parcells, his Hall of Fame coach, used to say, Phil Simms is not a quarterback, he's a football player because of his mentality, his toughness, his brave attitude and assertiveness. I see that in Jaxson, and his teammates here are saying they love his swagger, they love his energy, they love his work ethic, and they love his confidence. These are all things that clearly were developed while he was at Ole Miss.
Yeah, no doubt. Lane Kiffin did a tremendous job with him, because Lane's got pro background with his dad and what have you. And we run our program really in a pro way, if you will. It's very no nonsense. And I think that, that Lane has surrounded himself with some tremendous coaches. You got Charlie Weiss Jr. here that's been helping Jaxson Dart. Coach Judge has been here too. So there's been some really quality people around him. And so I think he is prepared to be successful on the pro level.
What, if anything, is the most curious aspect that you would like to see him develop as he makes the step to the pros? Everybody knows that nobody is exactly pro ready 100% when they make the jump to the NFL. There's going to be a step or two, or maybe even 3 or 4 things that they're going to need to develop quickly as they try to survive in this league. What would be those things in your mind?
Well, I think forcing the issue sometimes, with a young quarterback, you think you can just force a ball in. Sometimes I think he's going to have to make the right decisions on not to do that. And again, hopefully, the number of snaps he played on the college level and the maturity that he had. He played in a really good league. Our league is incredible. So,
yes, it is.
Loaded. In fact, you look at the NFL, they all end up in the NFL. So maybe it's not as big a step as we think to some degree.
Sometimes we think the SEC is just another division of the NFL.
Right. It's a feeder conference, that's for sure. And so he's seen a lot of great talent, gone against a lot of great talent too. But I think that's the main thing, is let the game kind of come to him. And adjusting somewhat. The speed of the game is going to be faster. I don't care how good our league is. You can get the NFL, everybody can run, and he'll be going against some brilliant coaches and all. But I do think the two things: one, he will absolutely love the challenge, and the second thing, he just wants to win. He's always been a guy that whatever it takes, whether it's me or I get a teammate involved, whatever it takes for us to win the game. I mean, that's been his goal since he's been at Ole Miss.
Now, from his time when he first got to Ole Miss from USC, obviously with Coach Kiffin, you have seen him every step of the way. So I'd like to know from you where you thought he made the biggest jumps in his development. What were the landmarks? What were the hurdles, if you will, that he had to continue clearing till he finally got to the point where he became a first-round draft pick?
Well, his first 2 years after coming from USC, he had to win the job, which is really crazy. I didn't think in his mind he thought, well, I have to go out here and win the job. And so he had to do that. There was competition in camp to win the job. And not that the rest of us thought he would not do that, because he's a fantastic quarterback. But I think that was part of it early on his development. And his first year at Ole Miss, coming from USC, he had some interceptions he probably shouldn't have had, and made a big jump to the following year. And then this jump this past year was phenomenal. I think, too, he banged up a little bit 2 years ago, and so he didn't throw the ball quite as effectively as he did this past year. But once you saw him totally healthy, he can make all the throws. I mean, he makes crossing routes, deep routes. He threw a ball in the bowl game this past year that I watched Eli here too. I did all of his games as well, and so I don't know if Manning could throw that. Don't tell Eli I said that, but he threw a ball in the deep corner in the bowl game, late in the game, after the game's pretty much over. That was an unbelievable dart, just in the left dart, if you will, in the left corner. But I think that he's very much prepared for the opportunity the next level. Is he prepared this quickly is going to be the big question.
Now, one thing we know for sure, it's that Dart was terrific for the Giants during their 3-0 undefeated preseason. He started one game, finished 32 out of 47, that's 68% completions, for 372 yards and 3 touchdown passes without any interceptions. He also ran 6 times for 52 yards with a touchdown and did fumble once. And as you heard David talk about, he does tend to lean with the upper body when he runs. He's got to learn to use the baseball slide. But that's another story for another time. The regular season is certainly a whole ball of wax. We know that. You got to pick it up a whole nother notch. And rarely does everything go as planned. So I asked David Kellum exactly how Dart navigated some of the rocky waters that he faced while he was with the Rebels, because some of those things are bound to come up in the NFL.
Yeah, no doubt. That's a great point. And not maybe a specific game, but he did have 2 or 3 of those where maybe he didn't perform quite as well or up to his standards. But in the course of those games, again, it goes back to, getting the rest of the other teammates involved. And we had tremendous receiving corps. Lane's always going to pretty much have a good running back room and good receivers, a lot of them in the NFL too, with DK Metcalf and all these people we've had through the years, So Ole Miss has put out some tremendous receivers, and I think getting them involved, dealing with maybe the running game in a more aggressive way if you're not throwing the ball as good. But he didn't have many of those, Paul. I mean, he was one of those guys that was extremely successful, but in a tough loss. And we had something like Kentucky last year. We lost a game which really haunted us all season, probably kept us out of the playoffs in the Kentucky loss, and went on to have a fantastic year. But Jaxson kept that team together and said, hey, we got a chance, keep going. And we got to the end of the year, lost to Florida in Gainesville, but had an opportunity with a win on the road to make the playoffs. And so he kept the team together a year ago with tremendous leadership and making sure everybody still gave, total effort.
Can you pinpoint a time, maybe at one point, either last season or the season before, where the folks down at Ole Miss started to think that, okay, he has a legitimate chance to be one of the first quarterbacks taken in the draft and be a first rounder? Because to be frank with you, David, I don't follow the college game as much until after the NFL season is over. And while I knew about who he was because he played at Eli Manning's alma mater, how could I not know who he was? I didn't know how serious his rise on the draft chart was going to be until it got to the end of the season. And all of a sudden at the combine, people are saying, well, he could possibly be the third quarterback or second quarterback taken.
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest with you. I think the bowl game helped him. Not that he intended to play that game to show himself again. I mean, he pretty much had proven himself, but he had such a tremendous game. Had a lot of scouts there too, and the Giants, I'm sure, had been on him for a while. And so as he steadily progressed, probably got to the point that, you look at him and say, hey, this kid can do everything. And he may not have a rocket Brett Favre arm, but it's good. He's not going to be a runner like some of the all-run quarterbacks, but he can run. He get great grasp of the game, takes instruction exceptionally well, and is just a huge leader and competitor. So, and then I know the NFL, you got to vet kids a whole lot more than you probably did in the good old days. You just sign a bunch of folks and straighten them out when they get there, But I'm sure that when they vetted him, they found out, hey, this is a quality person too that checks all the boxes.
This question may be a little out of your realm, David, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How much freedom do you think he had in Coach Kiffin's scheme and system? Was he one who had to do a lot of improvisation and had to make a lot of off-schedule plays? Or was he pretty much given the system and he kind of stayed within the framework?
I think that Lane gave him a lot of leash, if you will, some freedom to do different things, change of play periodically. But in saying that, they were on the same page. Both of them loved the offense that they were running. In most cases, there wouldn't be, a whole lot of change, but you had an option to run. It wasn't, an outright option, but it was an RPO type offense that allowed you to go to a different look. And he was really, really good at not looking down the first option as far as receivers go. He'd check and would check through 2, 3, 4 sometimes. And because of our receiving core being so good, there's usually every play somebody was going to be open. And Jaxson just continued to figure it out and find them. But I think he had a lot of leeway in Lane's offense.
We talked a lot earlier about some of the intangibles that he brings to the table. I remember one time Dan Reeves would tell us when he was coach of the Giants after he had such a successful career in Denver about some players and quarterbacks in particular have it. He couldn't define what it was, but it was something special that allowed them to rise above the fray, play their best in the biggest moments, be clutch, if you will, right? To have that ice water in their veins. Can you recall instances where you felt that Jaxson just had it, or maybe, quite frankly, maybe didn't have quite what you would wanted in those spots?
Oh, I think more times than not, in a key fourth down situation, Lane was more than willing to put it in his hands and say, okay, let's go get this first down. I trust you. There's a tremendous trust level there. But, yeah, ice water in the veins, no panic. Hardly ever can I remember a time when Jaxson had a panic moment, just very determined to be successful. And, on our level, Paul, we look at our kids and we say, oh, they ought to all be in the NFL. And we know that's not true. And Ole Miss had one of its best years ever in the draft this year. But still, that's a small percentage of your entire team. And here we've always compared everything to Archie and Eli. We compared Eli to Archie, and so we knew that Eli had the capability of being, high draft pick, tremendous quarterback, make all the throws. And so Jaxson Dart was one of those that came along through our program that we said, you know what, this kid, he's a lot like Eli. I mean, he can make all the throws, runs better than Eli, runs more like Archie. But you just had a feel that this was a guy that could play on the next level.
And obviously, between the coaching that he got at Ole Miss, between obviously the relationship he also had with Eli Manning, who we know did talk to him on a number of occasions, he has had so many good mentors. And I also get the impression that his parents, even growing up, also were really good mentors for him. So his maturing process, his growth process, seems to give him a step up, if you will, or a leg up on maybe some other guys who didn't have that kind of leadership kind of guiding him around through the whole system.
Yeah, great point. And the other thing is he listened. Sometimes you can be surrounded with a bunch of good people, good mentors, great coaches, and you have a degree of stubbornness where, I know what I'm doing type attitude. He never
David, I'm Italian. I understand that.
Yeah, no doubt. But he's always listened, absorbed, and then tried to transfer that into his style of play.
All right. Before we let you go, then, let me ask you if you could give me one really good story that illustrates, it could have been off the field, if you like, that illustrates what kind of guy Giants fans should expect when they see him out there on the field Sunday, and they see him now, according to Brian Dable, he's going to be the starting quarterback for the rest of the season. So what should Giants fans look forward to? There must be something you could tell us that would give us a good illustration.
Well, I think maybe not one particular story, but the the main thing with him is he enjoys life. I mean, he enjoyed college. He wasn't a partier, crazy kid, but he had fun and enjoyed it. And I think he has fun in the game. I think that's important. Sometimes it becomes so much of a job, and it's a job at your level, obviously. But I think that's the main thing, that he really enjoys the game, has a love of the game. And he was wonderful in the community. And we're a little community compared to New York City, obviously, but was very willing to reach out to the children of the community and, lift a teammate up if they're struggling. I mean, all of those things are qualities beyond his gifts on the field. And I think you'll see a good bit of that out of him.
Well, I will tell you this, David, in the short time that Jaxson Dart has been a Giant, we can see all the reasons why the folks down at Ole Miss were very much in love with him and supported him. And I know you guys will be cheering him on from a distance.
Well, that's a good point. Okay, I've got my Giants hat.
How about that?
Look here. I bought this when Eli was with the Giants, and so it's time to put it back on.
How about
We're
that?
down in Saints country, but we're going to be Giants fans here in North Mississippi for a while.
David, that is extremely impressive. I love the hat, in good shape. I mean, my goodness, not even crinkled. This is wonderful.
Yep. Watched a lot of games in the living room as Eli was playing with this hat on.
Well, I tell you what, I certainly hope that he does everything to make Ole Miss proud and the New York Giants proud as well. David Kellum, the play-by-play voice of the Ole Miss Rebels. Can't tell you how much we enjoyed talking to you today. Thank you so much.
All right, Paul. Thank you.
And again, thank you to David Kellum. He offered quite a bit of insight as to why Jaxson Dart has a bright future in the National Football League. And now it's really all up to the quarterback. I mean, he's going to put on that Giants helmet and be their starter beginning this weekend against the Los Angeles Chargers. All right. We hope you enjoyed that interview, because I certainly had a good time talking to David. I just thought he was terrific, and I couldn't think of a better guest, given the fact that the Jaxson Dart story is the headline. In fact, not only the headline of the day and the headline of the week here in New York, but it's getting all kinds of national attention. And so it just seemed to me that was a natural thing to do. And I do very much appreciate David Kellum's time to spend with us. All right, let's go back to some of our comments. And again, folks, you can see right there on the bottom of the screen, you can call us in, you can video us in, any way you like, in addition to the comments that we also get in the chat. Let's see what we got here. Matt Seepersad says, I know how much Paul loves fantasy football. Yeah, exactly, right? About as much as running into a skunk. Chargers offensive starters are all listed as must start against the Giants. We are significant underdogs. Well, Matt, the Giants are 0-3, okay? And they haven't looked very good in two of the games getting there, even if you wanted to say there was a lot of good stuff against Dallas. Is it any wonder that most people around the country put them as an underdog against a 3-0 Chargers team that, by the way, has some guy named Justin Herbert playing quarterback? Did you see that touchdown pass he threw in the latter stages of the fourth quarter the other day against Denver? I mean, he's rolling out to his left, and he's twisting and contorting his body, and he's throwing a ball that could have landed on the top of a pin into the end zone for a touchdown. That's making plays above the X's and the O's. And it wasn't just the throw, it was also the catch. All right, Oman Duda, been a long time since I remember above the X's and O's on a regular basis for the Giants, sadly. I like your idea of keeping track of them, Paul. Well, Oman, I really do believe that that's a critical part of the game. I don't have numeric evidence that indicates, like turnovers, if that gives you a much more significant chance of winning, and how many more do you have to have than the other side to greatly enhance your percentage. I don't know that anybody's ever kept that before. It's a very objective category. I'm willing to do it, but it is a very objective category. So it's kind of hard to quantify because I can only do it for the team that I'm watching every week. You got to watch all the plays. I see all the Giants plays. I could certainly, do a chart for them, but to really make the chart valuable, it's got to be put into context with the rest of the league. And I don't know anybody who keeps a chart of eye openers, the plays above the X's and the O's. I keep certain charts myself, from the Giants' individual games. But again, they're in a bubble. I don't have context with the league. And that always is really where the true value in a lot of these things lie. So when I tell you guys about sacks, and I could break that down for you, or I could break down the drop passes for you. These are some of the things that I keep on my charts on a weekly basis. What I'm doing is I'm comparing them to those players' charts from previous years, or comparing the corners to the Giants' corners of previous years. That's the only comparison that I can give. So I can say, look, they're doing better on drops this year than they did last year, right? Last year, I had the Giants down for 40 drops for the season. I had them for 4 in game 1 this year, 4 in game 2 this year, and none in game 3. How about that, by the way? You're looking for a crazy silver lining in the game against Kansas City? The Giants did not have a drop pass in the game. How about that for crazy? All right. Matt Seepersad says, I can't believe I have to root for Boston. He's talking about the Red Sox and the Blue Jays going at it while the Yankees try to leapfrog Toronto into first place in the American League East. Armand Duda says, we've had some success with Ole Miss quarterback alums in the past. Yes, we all know about Charlie Connolly and Eli Manning. That is true. Armand says, hey, don't think of it's rooting for Boston, Matt. Think of it as using them for our own gain. How sweet is it, right? How sweet is it? Boston needs to win to help themselves. The Red Sox badly want to get into the playoffs. And at the same time, every time they do, they're helping the Yankees twice as much. How incredibly sweet is that? Wow. Adino Israel. That's a new name that I don't think we've had on the show before. Dable is wrong for allowing this to look like Russ was the problem, knowing the Giants probably have the worst line and wide receiver core in the NFL. Well, Adino, I don't know that Dable is blaming Russell Wilson individually. Now, I know what you're saying because he's making the switch in the lineup at quarterback and he hasn't announced any other switch in the lineup. I understand. It looks like that. Dable was very clear today in saying that everybody is responsible for what the team has done so far. Everybody. And that's absolutely true. I mean, Russell Wilson is not the only guy who failed to make some plays in these 3 losses. In addition to that, to be honest, the defense has not exactly performed up to what they were supposed to do either. So as much as, you want to get on the Giants offensive line and you want to get on the Giants receivers, Adino, and I appreciate the perspective and the opinion, but, the defense more than the offense cost them that game against the Cowboys. All right. Armand Duda says, go Irish, by the way. Oh, okay, fine. I don't know where that came from. Armand also says the last red zone possession against KC, sure like Russell Wilson was the problem. Well, the only thing I would say there is that, yes, it was an ugly red zone possession. There's no question about that. Okay? I would also tell you I was on the goal line on the field for that possession. And the quarterback draw wasn't a bad call by the Giants coaching staff. There was room there initially, but Kansas City closed it off well. And then on the 3rd and 4th down passes, There was nobody open. And it was right in front of me. I'm right there on the goal line. I'm looking at the entire length across the field of everybody in the end zone. Kansas City did a marvelous job of shadowing the Giants' targets. I don't know if he could have gotten the ball threaded into Theo Johnson down at about the 1 yard line. Maybe he could have gotten it there. I don't necessarily know for sure if he would have been able to take it into the end zone. And as far as the throw, and I know a lot of people are getting on Wilson's case for airmailing the fourth down throw. Well, as it was explained to us, Wilson himself said the pressure had come in, he was off balance, didn't get to set, and the ball sailed on him. He wasn't throwing the ball out of bounds. So many people I heard on talk radio and on Twitter reading, why is he throwing the ball away? Doesn't he know it's fourth down? Of course he does. He's a 14-year future Hall of Fame veteran. He is not in that spot going to intentionally airmail the ball 10 feet above everybody's head. That absolutely makes no sense at all. And anybody who would say that does not have any clue as to what they're talking about. Now, is that how the ball wound up going? Yes. But you at least do the respectable thing and let the quarterback tell you what happened on the play. And when we talked to him as the media and asked him about it, he knew exactly what had happened. He knew exactly what had happened. He saw the field. He saw Theo Johnson down the center of the field, was hoping maybe he had enough time to get it to him. And the pressure got there. And he was not set. He was not on balance. And the ball sailed and got away from him. He was not intentionally throwing the ball away. It was fourth down. Why would he do that? And yet people actually like, really? He threw the ball away. No, he didn't. Oh, so many just believe whatever it is that they read or hear without actually thinking about it and processing it. I know you fans are a lot smarter than that. I know that you are. Please. All right, Matt Seeperstan says, this fellow at Ole Miss, this fellow's been at Ole Miss since before we landed on the moon. He's probably seen millions of minutes of football. Matt, that's one of the reasons why I wanted him on the show. Think of all the football he's seen, and not just football, but high-quality SEC football. And not just the players on Ole Miss, but the players throughout the conference, many of whom do go to the NFL. So his perception or his opinions within the context of what he has seen, I thought were incredibly valuable. And I hope you guys felt the same way. Armand Duda says, think of all the legendary players he has seen played all that time too. No question about it. Matt Seepersad sticks with us and says, what year did Ole Miss have their first Black American student athlete? I bet he was there to see it. It must have been a wild time. Matt, I don't have the answer to that, although Armand Duda comes back and says, what do you know? He's got the answer. Coolidge Ball was the first in 1970 for basketball. Ben Williams and James Reed were the first for football in 1971. Armand, appreciate the history lesson. I am not particularly an SEC historian, nor am I an Ole Miss historian. But great info, and thank you for chiming in and saving me the what do you call it? The obligation of trying to look that up, because we try to get all the answers for you on this program, even if we don't know right away. Armand says, oh yeah, it must have been especially wild, especially SEC territory, how far we have come. And Matt thanks Armand for the info. Absolutely. And Armand says, my pleasure. Why wouldn't you? It's great stuff. All right. Armand Duda says, good question, Paul. Giants starting quarterback has to meet a standard off the field as well as on. Sure he does. It's all part of it. When you're a quarterback, you're the leader of the guys in that locker room, and you're also the flagship face of the franchise. And to be honest, Russell Wilson did a very good job of holding up his end of the responsibilities as the Giants' starting quarterback. He did. And listening to his teammates today and listening to him and even Coach Daboll, everybody continues to profess high respect for Russell Wilson, and they should. Mark B says, David, thank you. Great guest, Paul. Well, thank you. And I'm sure that David will hear all of these accolades as he probably goes through his Twitter feed and sees some of the comments from the program. Armand Duda says, thank you, David. Matt C. Prasad says, Dallas is poo-poo. They lost to the Bears. Well, Matt, see, that's what makes that loss to the Cowboys so incredibly nauseating, right? Dallas does not have a very good roster. And the Giants went down to Dallas and wound up screwing up the game. Even when they had it within their clutches, they screwed up the game. They made some plays above the X's and the O's. But then at the very end of the game, they didn't. Dallas got to be the last team to make the plays above the X's and the O's. Specifically, a 64-yard field goal at the end of regulation that sent it to overtime. Now, we could all talk about the Giants' defense, but the kicker still had to make the kick. And of course, being a robot that he is, Aubrey drilled the darn thing. All right, whatever. Can't talk about the spilled milk now. It just doesn't do you any good. Matt C. Prasad says, Justin Herbert should have been our quarterback. Well, he had not decided to come out the year that the Giants might have been in position to take him. He had decided to stay another year, and that was the end of that. Arnold Stevenson, Freedom says, good evening, Paul. I think Scatterboo can really help Dart this Sunday. Go Giants. Well, Arnold, let me just say this. It is very, very important for the Giants to get a running game going against the Chargers, because Jaxson Dart is going up against a team that is in the top 10 of the NFL in all of the key defensive categories. And if you allow a defense, which already is that good, the opportunity to lean on one facet of the game, they're going to be even more difficult to move the ball or to score on. So yes, it's always a mantra, right? To try to be balanced, to try to have a semblance of a run game and a passing game so that you can keep the defense on their toes. That's always going to be the case. And against heavy pass rush teams, you definitely want to take some of the teeth out of the pass rush by running the ball really, really well. That becomes doubly important. Well, guess what? When you have a rookie quarterback making his first NFL start, I would say a running game is not just doubly important, I would say it's triply important. And now that Tyrone Tracy is going to be out of the lineup for at least a week, maybe two, I don't think a whole lot longer than that, but we'll see. Now that he's out of the lineup, yes, it is critical for Cam Scatterboo to continue his progress that we've seen over the first few weeks. It is important for Devin Singletary to give the Giants some effective reps. And it may even be practice squad running back Dante Miller. Might he be elevated? And I would think so, because you want to have 3 running backs on your 53. I think we'll get a chance to see Dante Miller elevated as a practice squad promotion. He hasn't had one yet. I think we'll see him. I don't know. I don't even know if he's going to get any reps. Maybe they'll have a package for him. I know this. With Dante Miller's incredible speed, he's the fastest guy, certainly, of anybody in the running back corps, and one of the fastest guys on the team, period. Okay? even if they have a small package for him, just a few plays, I wouldn't mind seeing him get the ball because he cannot run a whole lot of guys. Armand Duda says Dallas has significant issues in the pass rush and secondary too. Again, Armand, Dallas is just not that good. Mark B. Thought it might have been more conducive or beneficial to Dart and the Giants to start him against the 0-3 Saints instead of the 3-0 Chargers, but here we are, go Giants. Well, I will say this, Mark. There are always two sides to the coin. On one hand, do you want to start him at home instead of on the road in a place where the Giants have had a horrible history and in a place that does have a really great crowd? They draw well in New Orleans, and they are extremely loud. It is one of the hardest stadiums in the league for quarterbacks and offensive linemen and even the wide receivers and stuff to hear the signals. So that's one thing you would want to consider. I get it. The record's 0-3 compared to the 3-0 Chargers. I understand that. Might it also potentially on the plus side, if Jaxson Dart comes out on Sunday and does some really good things, it would certainly, I would think, I don't know if you're going to be at the game, Mark, but I would think anybody who's at the game is going to be electrified, and that would just enhance the spark that the team could feed off of, and who knows what could possibly happen from that point forward. So, if Jaxson Dart goes to New Orleans, makes his debut there, even if he does well, he's not going to have that many people in the crowd cheering for him, or for that matter, for the team to potentially try to encourage them and cheer them on. So there are two sides to this coin all around. There really are. So I understand. I don't know that there's truly a right or a wrong answer other than this. If the coaching staff, specifically Brian Daboll, had decided that he wants Dart to be the starting quarterback, then you just do it. You don't say in your mind, I want to make a change at quarterback, but I'm just going to wait a week and I'll make the change on Monday. Psychologically, I don't think that's good for any head coach to subconsciously have already made a lineup change before he goes into a game, knowing that he's going to make that lineup change official after the game. That just seems so disingenuous to me. I would have philosophically a hard time with that. So if Brian Daboll decided, as he said he was going to talk about things after the game, they had Monday to talk about it. Monday night they game planned. And on Tuesday morning, he went to the two quarterbacks and he told them what he was going to do. If you've made up your mind, if you've made your decision, then just do it. Be assertive enough to do it. And for that, you have to give Brian Daboll credit, whether or not you think it's a good idea this week or you think it's a good idea at all. Give Brian Daboll credit for taking a stand. He made a decision, and he's taking action on his decision. That's indisputable. Armand Duda says the dual threat of Scadaboo and Dart should give defensive coordinators more to have to plan for. Well, there is no doubt that Dart, with his young, fresh legs at this point, is much more of a running threat with the RPOs and quarterback draws or bootlegs than Russell Wilson. That is true, Armand. But do I really need to remind you? Unfortunately, Jaxson Dart still hasn't learned how to slide. He's going to need to do that. Okay? He's going to need to do that if he is going to survive in the National Football League. Because shoulder first and head first quarterbacks find themselves in a lot of pain Alma Duda says, let's see here. I meant Notre Dame when I said Irish. Laugh out loud since college football was our guest's field. Okay. Letter Candles. This is a new one. I'm praying we do well. As a season ticket holder, it's been harder to keep all 4 tickets every year. It's always been a tradition for my father and me, but now he wants to sell 2 and just him stay home. Oh, my. I understand. You know why? Because here's the thing, Letter. The tradition of family going to National Football League games is such an important part of what we do in this country. NFL football, even high school football on Thursday nights or Friday nights, Saturday afternoons, college football. Again, I know we have all different days now. The schedule makers have tried to monopolize all of the days of the week at this point. But the truth is, football tailgates, whether it's NFL, college, or high school, it's a really, really important part of our family units. And to be honest, even if you don't have tickets, football's appointment viewing. I've said this many, many times. It's the greatest game in the universe. So am I sympathetic to the situation? Yeah, I really am. But we all know that in terms of actual tickets themselves, they can be costly. And if you have better things to do with your funds, things that are more important, that's a decision that fortunately we're all free to make. But I do honestly believe there's tremendous value in families and friends gathering for football games. I think it's an important part of our culture, our society. I think it's an important thing for families to pass on in terms of tradition and in terms of people growing up with it and then taking it and passing it on to their kids. It's really special. It is. Football's America's game. It passed baseball a good 20 years ago. It is America's game. So I am certainly sympathetic to your dilemma. Matt Sieper said, I think we will get to see the entire field get utilized in the passing game, specifically the middle of the field. Well, let me make something clear to you, Matt. I'm going to look this up because I want to make sure I got this exactly right, okay? I don't want to, I'm one who's very much into facts. I believe in facts and only facts. I don't like to deal in hypotheticals, and I don't like to deal in rumors or for that matter, any speculation. Jaxson Dart is officially listed by the Giants at 6'2". Okay? That's perhaps a tad on the high side. Let me see if I think I have this. His combine measurements. Okay. Well, the combine says he is 6'2.25". So they're saying the Giants' measurements are accurate. I think he's really, really close to that. He's got a lot of curly hair, and that adds a little bit to it. His hair is always curly and always messed up. He's got that new modern young guy kind of look. One of those, he's a dude, right? That's what he is. So, I mean, typically, you like your quarterbacks to be 6'3", 6'4", to be honest. Typically. Doesn't mean a guy who's 6'2" can't be a winning quarterback in the league. We know plenty have done it. But you are right in that Russell Wilson's height does cause specific issues, as we discussed on this program, and I've said on Big Blue Kickoff Live many times. Russell Wilson's height does cause some sight issues in the passing lanes, especially in the front of the pocket. We get all that. 6'2" is a little taller. It is. It is. And it may help him see better down the hash marks. Okay. I don't know how much, but I agree with you. He is a little taller. He should see a little bit better. Of course, the problem is if you have 6'3" and up defensive linemen or linebackers crushing the front of your pocket and running straight for your face, it won't make any difference at all. Let a Candle says, the unknown right now gives some hope. JVX Tex Bori says, how's it going, bud? I'm nervous for Dart, man. I really hope he's ready. We definitely need a spark. I think everybody in the building feels that way. Mark B says, I'm sure Dable will give Dart the plays he knows he can make and open the playbook more as the season goes on. No doubt. The kid is still in the developmental stage. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Oh, without question, you don't need anybody to have seen practice to understand that Jaxson Dart is obviously a work in progress at the very beginning of that work in progress. And so it makes no sense for them to widely open up the playbook right out of the box. Now, the Chargers are going to know that. They're already a top 10 defense across the board in the league, and they know that, which means Jaxson Dart's mountain to climb is going to be a whole lot taller, right? Because the Chargers are simply that good. Well, how do you combat that? You're probably not going to combat it too much with the playbook or the schemes. You have to combat it with execution. That's what's going to happen. The Giants are simply going to have to make some of those plays, some of those eye openers we talked about, above the X's and the O's. If Jaxson Dart's going to pull off an upset with his teammates over the Los Angeles Chargers. Yes, that's what they're going to have to do. James O'Keefe, we gave Dallas that game. That's what hurts. Yes, coulda, shoulda, woulda. Yes, James, you're right. And if they're 1-2 instead of 0-3 right now, things do look a bit different. Matt Seepersad says, has Scottaboo taken over the number one running back role? I don't know if his style is sustainable over the entire course of a game, but I also think he will wear out linebackers before he gets tired. Well, he's gonna probably be the lead guy this week. I think they've seen enough of him that they like him to be one, but I do think Singletary's going to be 1A. You will see a lot more of Singletary in this game, I suspect. The coaches love him. He's incredibly reliable. He's a pro. He does what he's supposed to do. Again, you won't see plays necessarily above the X's and the O's out of him. You got a better chance with Scottaboo. But Singletary is that steady force. James O'Keefe says, screens to Turbo would be great. Dante Miller, I understand. Get him the ball in space. Paulie, what do you think of the Giants' new kicker? Well, you're talking about Koo, the Ridgewood, New Jersey native from nearby here at MetLife Stadium. He wound up with the Atlanta Falcons, played with them for a number of years, made the Pro Bowl back in 2020. His accuracy percentage over the years, which was incredibly high when he first came into the league, has somewhat tailed off. And after he missed a critical kick in week 1 for the Falcons, they decided that they had had enough patience and they released him. So now Koo has signed a practice squad deal with the Giants. He and Jude McAtamney, remember the Rutgers kicker who was on the team last year, and it is his second year on the practice squad as an international exemption. Well, Coach Dable said that Koo and McAtamney will compete for the job this Sunday because Graham Gano is out. They have already ruled him out for Sunday's game against the Chargers. So the two practice squad kickers will compete, and whether or not they IR Gano, we don't know that. They may just bring up a practice squad elevation with one of the two kickers and have them kick on Sunday. If Gano gets IR'd, Well, now that's a minimum of 4 weeks, and then in all likelihood, you would sign one of the kickers to be actually on the 53 as opposed to using an elevation. Matt Seepersad says, I remember when Eli threw 6 TDs in New Orleans and Breeze threw 7, another heartbreaker. Yes, Matt, the game ended with a personal foul face mask penalty on special teams, which allowed the Saints to kick an extremely long field goal on the final play of regulation, and the Giants lost. I remember it very well, and yeah, it is a chamber of horrors. The Superdome has been a terrible place for the Giants over the years. Sean Jackson, one of our regulars from the past. Good evening, Paul. Before the season got started, the scenario of the Giants being winless and starting Dart before 6 games were played was the scenario I wasn't thrilled about. Russ deserved more than 3. Sean, there are a lot of different ways this early part of the season could go. It was always possible that they could win 2 of 3. It was always possible they could win 1 of 3. It was always possible they would win none of 3. Win 3 of 3? I don't think too many people thought that. But, of course, before the season, anything is possible. And then within those different results or different sections of the standings on a week-to-week basis, there were the intangibles that would have to be figured in. Did you play well in X defeat? Did you play well in the Y defeat? What went wrong in the Z defeat? All of these scenarios, it was really like a big roulette wheel. All of the different scenarios for the first 3 games. Okay? All of the different scenarios. The worst case scenario was they go 0-3, they don't look good doing it, and they would have to decide that a change at the quarterback position was necessary. I think it was the most dramatic and the most negative of the scenarios that could happen. Sean, it happened. I did not talk about it much because it was not something that I don't think anybody wanted to hear, wanted to think about, or wanted to contemplate, but it was always a possibility. And it has come to fruition. Mark B said, I thought Russell would get more than 3 games to get the season going. Sean Jackson says, as a Giants fan, I'm frustrated and nervous, Paul, as I feel I've watched this Giants movie 6 of 7 years ago. DJ's rookie season. Yeah, we talked about that earlier in the program. Jones came in week 3, and the Giants wound up going 3-9 during his 12 games, although he played well and gave Giants people a lot of hope about his future. And of course, he has proven to be the good NFL quarterback that I knew he would be. Unfortunately, it's not for the Giants. Circumstances here went bad, and it just became unattainable to continue going in that direction. Jones was clearly impacted by all of the stuff that was going on around him, and his play suffered as the season went on last year. And so he needed a breath of fresh air. He got it, and his talent is now showing, which to any of us who know anything about football knew. Daniel Jones is a good NFL quarterback. There was never a doubt. Armand Duda, Scatterboo's going to be number 1 until Tracy gets back. Again, I don't think there's much doubt, but 1A is going to be Singletary. They're not going to ignore Singletary. Isaac Moore says, I saw the Dart presser and you gave him a nice shot in the arm there. I don't necessarily recall that, but okay. Matt Seepersad, Paul, I'm in Palm Bay, Florida for work. 2 of 10, do not recommend. If you ever retire, don't come here. Matt, I'm guessing that you don't like the area. So here's my suggestion. Get out of there as fast as you can. And by the way, I don't plan on ever leaving. This is where I belong. This is the job that I belong in, and this is the area that I do belong in as well. Mark B., how do we match up against the Chargers on both sides of the ball? Mark, as we close out our program, that is going to be part of Friday morning's 3 key matchups to watch. Remember, for those of you who don't watch this program on a regular basis, every Friday we do the 3 key matchups to watch for the Giants if they're going to pull off a victory. We do a 20-minute taped show, and we give you those 3 keys. We tell you why they're important and how it might work for the Giants. We'll have that your way first thing on Friday morning. Then, of course, the next day following the game, we come back with our Giants game balls and gassers for the offense, for the defense, and for the special teams. And that comes up every Monday morning. And then, of course, every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We are here live to talk Giants football with you. I always promise you at least an hour. I try to give you an hour and a half if you guys want to keep going. But I do believe that our hour and a half is up tonight. So I'm simply going to get to these final comments. Armand Duda, had Russ won even one of those games, he'd still be starting. 0-3 hurts, but what's worse is we are 0-2 in the division. Armand says, as well as Russell played against Dallas, you have to take into account how poor they are on defense. Isaac Moore says, Russ made bonehead plays. That's why he got benched. Mark B says, I just hope the O-line can keep Dart upright and stay injury-free. And James O'Keefe speaks the truth of all truths. Paul will never retire. They will have to change the locks on all the doors and gates. And with that, that is the end of tonight's edition of the Big Blue Breakdown. Our thanks to Ole Miss football voice, David Kellum. And David Kellum has been doing Rebels football for the longest time. His information a half hour into this program about Jaxson Dart is something that I think if you folks missed it, you're going to want to go back to the YouTube archive and get a listen. Because David had quite a bit to say about what makes Jaxson Dart tick and why he believes Dart is going to have a successful NFL career. With that, folks, I bid you a fond good night. We'll see you again next time here on the Big Blue Breakdown. I'm Paul Dottino. So long, everybody.